Welcome back everyone to the third video in the second part of the episode where we wrap up what we need to learn about window functions. So let's head on back in to SSMS. Okay then, just double check that you're in the right database there, and we'll go over the row number versus the min-max aggregate functions. Now, as you remember previously, with the little example we had here, we're pulling either the minimum or the maximum row number there, based on our little select outside of our partitioning select there. Now, you might have been thinking, well, you taught us the min and the max functions there, so why don't we just use those? And quite rightly so, you can use them in certain situations. So if we take this little query here, where once again we're pulling the largest extended price for each customer ID there in our row number. Again, we're just looking at invoice date year of 2015 and customer IDs greater than 2. If we have a look at that there and we get these results, then we could say we're simply trying to pull the max as well. So if we have a look at this one here, there you go, we're getting exactly the same values pretty much for each customer ID. There's 655 rows, click on there, 655 rows. So using the max, as you can see, instead of all this row number gumph, is a lot simpler to use. And of course we can quite easily pull the minimum as well against that without having to rely on changing the row number function. As you can see, we'll let SQL Server sort stuff out, figure out what it needs to do, and hopefully we'll get some results soon. There you go. So I'll put it at max price, but that's actually the minimum price there. So we've got 8694 and we've got the minimum. Whereas if we were to show that here, we'd need to put another row number line there. So as you can see, using min and max, very simple, very straightforward, and in this scenario I would prefer to use these two functions there. However, things start changing when we have to start adding in additional columns. So for example, we wanted to not just see the customer ID and the max price there, but say we wanted to see the invoice ID against that specific max price as well as such. So we wanted to see these results here. So as it runs off, we've still got our max price showing, but there's the invoice ID along with it. Now if we do the same with our min-max functionality here, and we'd run the two off, are we expecting the same results? Quite possibly. Remember, we have to group by the customer ID and the invoice ID. As you can see, we're starting to get vastly different results. So number 3, that's 655 rows compared to 22,000. So there's something weird going on there. As you can see, it's produced every invoice ID for every customer and showing the max price for that invoice ID. Now that is because what's happening here is it's grouping on the customer ID and the invoice ID, whereas in our partitioning clause here we simply partitioned it by the customer ID itself. So no matter how many additional columns we pull in here, they'll just be informational columns, and all the partitioning is going on by just what is in our row number functionality there. And we're only pulling number 1 to get the highest extended price. So in certain situations where you are simply pulling the minimum and maximum based on what you're grouping it by, then the min and max functions are really, really good. However, if you need to do a min and a max on simply one column, etc., of the query that you're going in, then you might come across problems when you have to start grouping by. So that's when you would use your partition by instead. It's obviously a lot more flexible to do it with the good old row function there. Right then, multiple partitionings. As we saw earlier with the order by, we could add additional columns that we want to sort it by to get either our descending or our ascending values there. Now we can also use multiple columns within our partition by section there. So we've got the customer ID thrown in there, and we've got the year of the invoice date as well. So here you can see we filtered it by the year being 2015 only, so we were only getting the data for 2015. But what if we wanted to see everything that we saw above, but we wanted to see a breakdown on the year of the invoice date as well? Well, we can simply put the partition by customer ID, so that's the first partitioning we want to see there, and then we want to break down that partition even further by the year on the invoice date, which we have up here. Then we want to sort by the extended price as well. Again, we're only looking at customer IDs greater than 2, and we'll do the group by to sort our sum here. So let's have a look and see what's going on there. So as you can see, customer ID 3, so that's our first partition in there. And then we've got our invoice year 2013, and we've got our extended price. Here's our lowest, row number 1, going up and up and up and up to row number 39. And now we're still in customer ID 3, still in that main first partition, but you can see we're switched over to a secondary partition of 2014. There's the lowest value, and we're starting at a row number ascending of 1. As we go down, we then hit 2015 for the same customer ID, the lowest amount, row number 1, and last but not least, 2016. There you have it for customer ID 3, the lowest value, row number 1. So we can actually select the lowest value for each customer ID for each year. So now we're getting into some serious partitioning. As I scroll down the list, we suddenly hit customer ID 4. So we're changing the initial partition there, increasing, and we're going back to 2013 on the secondary partition. 138 and 1 as the lowest number. And it works in exactly the same way, 2014, 15, 16, and then we hit number 5, and so on, down the whole list. Quite a few rows there, all customers, all year, and the row number ascending. So that can be quite useful. Now if you selected the row number equal to 1 in an outer sort of select, you'd be pulling the lowest extended price per customer per year and all the additional data that goes along with that one there. So we can add as many partitions in here and as many ordered by columns in here, simply separated by a column. But as you can see, the more you start adding in, the more complex your partitioning and your ordering by then becomes. Another thing to take into consideration is the order in which you have your partitions, and of course your order bys. In this case, we want to see every customer ID and then every year broken down. Say we put the 2 around in the other order. Let's see what happens there. We'll move that there, paste the other one in there, and see what happens with that. Here we get customer ID of 3, invoice year 2013 from 1 to 39, and then it will show customer ID 4 within 2013. So sticking to 2013, the invoice year is the first partition, and then the customer ID is the second one. Now that simply shows the way it's displayed pretty much, because at some point, once we get past 2013, we'll hit 2014 for all the customers as well. So the way you have your partition by columns there will dictate how the data is shown on the end. So that's multiple partitioning for you. Let's wrap things up with another little scenario to help you to get your head around the multiple partitions. So what we're looking at then, so the customer service manager has been asked to look into what items our customers are ordering the most of. She's come to you to help her out with the data. You need to provide her with the following. So here's the columns that she's asked for: customer order ID, item description, the year the order was placed in, and the quantity of the item ordered for every order line. You then need to find a way to filter all the data, showing only the line with the largest quantity of items ordered for each customer for each of their orders. So you then need to decide what columns here you want to put as your partitioning. There's 2 of them there. So once you've put together your select statement, bringing in these lines, making sure those are all good, then decide what 2 columns you want to bring in your partitioning by clause there. And there's one order by column, very similar to what's going on here. 2 partitioning by columns, 1 order by column that you need to bring back in a row number here. And right at the end, once you're happy with that row number, once it's all working fine, simply wrap it up in another select statement to pull the largest quantity of items. So that's where your row number is equal to 1, as we did above. So if you want to give that a try, have another read of the question, get your head around what's being asked, bang out some code, and we'll go through it when you're ready. Okay then, let's begin. First one we've asked is the customer, so we'll bring in the customer. Looks like we'll be using a multitude of columns, so we'll use our pseudonyms as well. There's our customer name. We've got the order ID, so we looks to be bringing in, looks like we need to bring in our order table. Where is he? Customer orders. Here we go, sales orders. Customer ID, and we link it back up to the customer ID there, like we've done 1,000,001 times before. Okay, so item description, as we remember, item description is within the order lines table, so let's bring that one in as well. Order ID equals our order. order ID. There we go. So we've linked them all together. Let's bring in the order ID quickly. And the item description. There we go. Easily done. And then we need the year the order was placed. So that's the order date, and we bang on our year functionality there. That's our order year. There we go. So far so good. And last we need the quantity of the items ordered for every order line. So it's per order line, so we don't need to sum anything, so no totals per order. Quantity, and that's it, pretty much. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple query going on there. Let's have a look at that, and there you have it with our quantity there. Brilliant. So we've got our 5 lines of data returned there. Now we need to fulfill the other requirement here, a way to filter all the data showing only the line, the largest quantity of items ordered for each customer, for each of the orders. Now if you remember, our orders have got multiple order lines, so we need to make sure per order we return the largest quantity based on the order line, and we need to do that for each customer as well. So looking at the data, we can see we've got our customer name there, so we can put a partitioning on that, and we've also got order for each customer, largest quantity of items for each of their orders. So we've got an order ID as well. So customer name and order ID is probably going to be our main partition by, and quantity of course will be the order by in that situation. So let's see how we go on that. As you can see, it's quite tricky to get your head around what's being asked sometimes, but quite often if you just give it a try and look at what's going on, put in some code and work through it there. So it's per customer for each of their orders. Order by quantity of items. And she's after the largest, so we then put a descending in there. There we go. Let's have a look when we run that off. Row number 1, 2, etc. So you can see on this one here, we've got one customer with one order ID, and there's 2 lines there. That's because on this order ID, there were 2 order lines. On this one here, there were 3 order lines. But as you can see, the highest value here is our row number 1. So we need to make sure we pull this row here, we skip the next 2, pull this one, etc, etc. So let's simply crack on and put that in as a CTE. And then we'll simply select the order year from our CTE, where the row number is equal to 1. That's it, pretty much. Now you could have put this in as a sub-select, of course. We've opted for a C to E, and there you have it. Missed something off, which is the quantity. Let's put that one in, shall we? And there you have it, there's our quantity. So for that one you had 50, for that one we knew there were 2 rows for that, but the highest was 72 there, and that's the description of the highest one. So that's it. Pure and simple. We've got our row number. We had to think a little bit about the partition by. Here we're talking about the customer and each of their orders, and then the largest quantity of items. As soon as they're asking for the largest or the smallest, then we know we need to put that in the order by. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for the row number and an introduction to the partitioning or window functions for you. So join me in part 3, where we cover a few more of the commonly used window functions. We'll have a little bit more fun and games, playing around with those, seeing what we get and seeing what they are all about. Until then, everyone, I hope you all have a fantastic day.